It's the night of February 11th, 1983, off the coast of Delaware Bay. A 605-foot cargo ship moves steadily north through heavy seas. Her deck lights cut across the waves as wind and spray sweep over the bow. On radar, she appears as a single green echo among dozens of coastal freighters, each pushing through the same storm front moving up the Atlantic. On board the SS Marine Electric, 34 men work through the night. Pumps are running, securing lines are checked, and hatch covers are inspected against the growing swell. The weather is deteriorating, and the ship is taking more water with every impact. What the crew cannot see is how much the years have weakened her. Corroded steel and worn seams lie hidden beneath layers of paint. Each wave that breaks across the deck forces more water into the holds below. Within hours, this vessel will disappear beneath the Atlantic. This is the story of the SS Marine Electric, and the night routine weather became a national disaster. Marine Electric was a bulk carrier built in 1944 as a T2 tanker and converted in 1961 to transport coal. Operated by Marine Transport Lines and chartered by the Philadelphia Electric Company, she departed Norfolk, Virginia on February 10, 1983, carrying 24,800 tons of coal bound for Somerset, Maine. At departure, the vessel was nearly 40 years old. Inspection records from previous years documented corroded deck plating and leaking hatch covers. Some repairs had been made, but deterioration remained extensive. The ship was cleared for service under Coast Guard inspection. By the afternoon of February 11th, the Marine Electric was proceeding north along the east coast. Forecasts call for winds above 50 knots and seas exceeding 25 feet. Captain Philip Corll decided to maintain course. Near the Delaware coast, the ship began encountering breaking seas. Crew reported water entering the forward holds through damaged hatch covers. Chief Mate Robert Cusick ordered the bilge pump started. Despite continuous pumping, the list increased. At midnight, inspections confirmed flooding in holds 1 and 2. By 1 a.m., the storm had intensified. The deck was repeatedly submerged, and tarpaulins were tearing loose. Pumps could not keep up. The captain turned west to ease the strain on the hull, but the list continued to worsen. At 2:30 a.m., steering became unstable. The chief engineer reported multiple bilge alarms sounding. The captain contacted the Coast Guard Rescue Coordination Center in Baltimore, advising that the ship was taking on water but was not yet in immediate danger. By 3 a.m., the list exceeded 10 degrees. Electrical power began to fail. Water spread through the midsection as the deck plating gave way. At 4 a.m., Captain Corll issued a mayday. Marine Electric taking on water, heavy list, preparing to abandon ship. The position was 36 degrees 59 minutes north, 75 degrees 25 minutes west, approximately 30 miles east of Chincoteague, Virginia. At 4:10 a.m., the Marine Electric broke apart and sank. Most of the crew entered the water directly. The sea temperature was 3 degrees Celsius, 37 degrees Fahrenheit. Radio contact was lost moments later. The Coast Guard initiated immediate search operations, deploying helicopters from Elizabeth City and Cape May and the cutters Point Highlands and Cape York. Only fragments of the ship were detected by radar as the storm continued to move north. At first light on February 12, 1983, the storm moved north along the coast. The sea south of Delaware Bay was covered with floating debris. Oil, timber, and sections of hatch covers drifted across the swells. The U.S. Coast Guard began an immediate search. Aircraft from Elizabeth City and Cape May were dispatched at dawn. The wind remained above 40 knots and visibility was less than 1 mile. At 6:38 a.m., a helicopter crew located a man in the water wearing a red survival suit. He was Chief Mate Robert Cusick, one of the 34 men aboard the Marine Electric. He had been in the sea for nearly 2 hours and was suffering from hypothermia, but still conscious. 2 other survivors, George McIntosh and Paul Drowan, were found later that morning clinging to a damaged life raft. No one else was recovered alive. Throughout the day, cutters Point Highlands and Cape York searched the area. They recovered bodies, life jackets, and sections of deck plating. Most of the debris was concentrated 30 miles east of Chincoteague, Virginia, close to the position of the final distress call. The water temperature measured 3 degrees Celsius, cold enough to cause unconsciousness within minutes. The search continued into February 13th. Additional aircraft and vessels joined from the Navy and Civil Air Patrol. The search grid covered more than 900 square miles. By the third day, no further survivors were found. The Coast Guard ended surface operations after 72 hours. Only 3 men had survived. A Navy salvage team located the wreck several weeks later. It lay upright in 270 feet of water on a bearing northeast of the Delmarva Peninsula. Underwater cameras confirmed the hull was broken open forward of the midsection. Several hatch covers were missing, and large gaps were visible along the deck plating. Investigators noted heavy corrosion and deformation consistent with structural failure in heavy seas. On March 8, 1983, the U.S. Coast Guard Marine Board of Investigation opened a formal inquiry in Baltimore, Maryland. The surviving officers gave detailed testimony. Chief Mate Cusick described the forward hatches leaking heavily during the final hours and the inability of the pumps to keep up with the flooding. He testified that the ship had shown rust and wear for years, and that earlier repairs had not stopped the leaks. Records from marine transport lines, the vessel's operator, showed that maintenance reports had documented extensive corrosion. Repairs were often limited to welding thin steel patches and applying tar to seal seams. Inspection records from the Coast Guard's local office confirmed that the ship had been cleared for service only months before the sinking, despite these known conditions. The board determined that flooding began when seawater entered through the deteriorated hatch covers and spread to adjacent holds. As the forward section filled, the ship's bow settled lower, exposing more hatches to the waves. Once water reached the midship compartments, electrical systems failed, and the hull broke apart under stress. The official report was released later in 1983. It cited poor maintenance, insufficient inspection procedures, and inadequate safety equipment. The investigation found that many ships of similar age and construction were still operating under outdated inspection standards. Following the report, the Coast Guard initiated a complete review of its certification system. Dozens of aging vessels were withdrawn from service or ordered to undergo structural testing. The sinking of the Marine Electric also exposed deficiencies in rescue capability. During the search, air crews were unable to enter the water to reach survivors because no specialized personnel or equipment existed for open sea recovery. In response, the Coast Guard established the Rescue Swimmer Program in 1984. The program trained personnel to deploy directly from helicopters into rough seas to assist survivors. By the late 1980s, the Marine Electric had become a reference case for maritime safety reform. The wreck remains on the seabed east of Chincoteague, used for research and diver training. Annual memorials are held in Norfolk and Chincoteague to honor the 31 men who died. The changes that followed, the modern inspection system, updated survival gear, and the formation of the Rescue Swimmer Corps, trace directly back to that night in February 1983. When an aging coal carrier exposed the limits of a system that had gone unchanged for decades.